Good evening. Wow, that's close up. Good evening. I'm Paul Wheels, and welcome to IoTNorth, May 2022. We've got a great talk coming up, understanding IoT security with JG. I'm going to bring in my good friend John. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks, Paul. Just about to start a large piece of IoT work for a multinational that I can't talk about because I'm under NDA as usual. Whilst we're on the, we're talking, tonight's talk combines two of my favorite things, IoT and security. I've been reading this very interesting book for the last couple of
hardware
months.
pen testing.
By someone called Jean Georges Valle, who we might be meeting shortly. So hopefully I'll have some interesting conversations and questions at the end. We got two very good talks coming up in the next couple of months, which I haven't published yet because we're just waiting on some graphics. But if you keep checking back on the website, we've got fast tracking enterprise business outcomes at the edge in June, and protect the very big with the very small, counting bears with tiny ML by Jim Bennett, who's a very entertaining speaker I've heard before.
And that is June, July?
June, July. And then August, we're both going on holiday. So
we are.
I won't be running a meetup from Canada, thankfully.
Well, I might be away for September's meetup because it looks like I'll be going at the end of August. So you never know. I might give you the keys to drive StreamYard. We'll have a chat about that. But okay, I might be, being well, I might be in the Maldives.
As usual, we're looking for speakers. If you've got an idea for a talk, please get in touch.
We are indeed. We're looking for speakers. We want to get the calendar filled up for the rest of the year. We've got I've got some people from Tech Data and stuff that I need to connect you with to have them come and chat with us. We're interested for sponsors, as John just reminded me before we came live here, that I've been funding IoTNorth for a while now. It would be great to get some help there. And as well, if you've got any friends, family, or if you're interested in helping in organizing the events, in person, virtual, mostly definitely virtual, which it seems to work really well. But we're quite keen to have any help with marketing, putting graphics together. If you've got a son, daughter, child, whatever, or you're interested in yourself and just helping us pull that stuff together, anything would be great, as we're here to help the community. And I think what we'll do now is bring in JG, or also known as Jean Georges.
Yeah, hello guys. Hello guys. Hope you're doing well. Hello everybody. Good evening, good morning, whatever may be the time for you. So yeah. I'm Jean Georges Valle. So like my name kind of gives away I'm a French guy. I work for Kroll, and I'm mainly doing like IoT hardware embedded at large pen testing. Things I guess you want the show to start, guys. You have some questions? Let's roll.
Do you have any questions, John, or should we fire straight ahead?
No, that's great. But if anyone's got any questions, put them in the chat and we'll try and address them as we're going through or at the end as time is available.
That's right. Whatever platform you're on, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, if you pop a question into, or just say hello, it'd be great to see you. Pop it into the comments and we'll respond live to you. And handing the keys over to you, JG.
Okay, like I think the one's very interested in seeing my ugly mug. Let's go to the slides. So yeah, today we're gonna talk about understanding IoT security. Like that's not a very like easy thing to understand. Let's start with like who I am. So I'm working for Kroll. I'm a French guy, which is based in Belgium. My background is in InfoSec. Like I'm not an engineer, much less an EE, but I still dabble a little bit with hardware. I mainly spend my life working in InfoSec as a consultant for a lot of different companies and a lot of clients. So I've worked a little bit all over the board in InfoSec, from banking to embedded, from writing exploits to OT, but like mainly at the crossroad of embedded and industrial pen testing. Yeah, so I did like paper pushing jobs, but I'm mainly a pen tester. I'm still a pen tester that values processes because I've witnessed a lot of horrors in my time. And I'm also, like John very kindly showed, a culprit of a book about practical hardware pen testing. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about IoT security. And it's not going to be a technical talk. Why? Because IoT security is actually not a technical problem. What we are going to talk about today is how to establish a list of security requirements that are fit for designing or onboarding a device or a system. And it's not going to be sexy hardware stuff. So from what I understood from what I've been driven a little bit by our IoTNorth very nice presenters, is that the ODS is mainly made out of IoT device user or people that work for companies that use IoT devices or IoT device producers / vendors. And in my experience, the main concerns are shared, like how the hell do I onboard security with all of these foreign things I have no clue about? How do I trust my provider and the stuff they give me? How do I approach this whole security with a lot of different devices and a lot of different contexts? And how do I address these risks? So I like, to be very obvious, I like to start thinking at the beginning. Security after the fact is always very expensive. Security is a process. Security is not a technical thing. And it's far too open that I'm called in emergency mode, like, please test this thing we had no clue about, and that the business wants deployed because they want to know what the temperature of their seats or whatnot. And it's too late when you're there. Like, you should really start with like the existential questions. What are my devices? What am I going to be doing with that? Like, who is going to be going after me? And what can I do about it? And it's not going to be pretty, because it's not going to be as simple. The answers are not simple. You really have to sit down and think about it. First thing first, like what are we talking about? Why am I here? What's going to happen with these devices? The best wrong answers you hear from the vendors is their devices are great, they know what they do, they know their devices, they're going to take care of everything, it's wonderful. The users are like very, very often clueless. They are, depending on the maturity level of the company, they may be like onboarding, having a serious onboarding process, but most of the time it's a little bit like pushed by the top. The business is pushing, they want stuff fast, they want stuff now, and they just basically plug the things there, and it looks pretty, but it's not really managed. The thing is, when you talk about embedded systems, you receive a box, you plug it in, but it's not that simple. Whether you are a device producer, then you may see familiar names in there, or you're a device user, and some of the stuff is going to be completely new to you. But it's very rare that when you look at a given device, it's only one actor that have been involved in producing both the hardware and the software that help support this device. Usually you have involved a company that's going to provide the chips, they're going to provide the drivers for the chips, they're going to provide the like compiler, that's the company which is going to do the integration of the chips, the tool chain they're going to use to produce the software that lives on the device. they're gonna probably integrate external software, stuff like additional open source components or components, software components that were developed like for them by external companies. An external company may be involved into actually designing the hardware for them. They may involve other companies that's going to help them, like support some cloud providers, and a fourth or a fifth or a sixth company is going to produce the hardware, sometimes in China, sometimes somewhere else for them. And in the end, they're going to give the product to a vendor, and this vendor is going to deploy the device at the client. That's a lot of parties, of stakeholders into building this device, so it ends up in your company, or that help you build this device so they end up at your clients. And now all of these actors, all of these stakeholders, like, do you know them? Do you trust them? Do you know what they put in your device? Most probably no. And when you have to answer this question, is my device vulnerable to something, to the latest log4j, whatever, shell shock, whatever? Very often, though, the best answer you can give is maybe. And that also means that there is nobody which is strictly a vendor, because they are using somebody else's software. So everybody is a little bit of a user. And now, like, how do you face this complexity? And why do you have kind of to face this complexity? First thing is, like, how do I maintain an inventory of my devices? How do I maintain an inventory of the software which is running on it? What should I keep an inventory of? Because in the end, you will have, whether you're a vendor or you're a user, you will have to manage these devices. You will have to ask the question, like, do I have to patch something? How should I do this patching? Who should I call to get my updates? Like, am I allowed to have updates? Can they update? Do they know? And your management will ask you this question: how can you manage this? How can you support your internal security processes? How do you mitigate? And without a good inventory, without a good software bomb for vendors to provide to your clients, to provide to your own vulnerability management process, how do you face these kind of mess of stakeholders, of components? Like, that's really something the industry at large have to put more effort into managing the inventories, managing the software bill of materials. As a vendor or as a user, what kind of things should you really keep into your inventory? Like, first, all of the things you usually find in your CMDB, like in your usual corporate CMDBs, you should already onboard, like location, MAC addresses, IPs. All of this, of course, you should get. But you should also, if you're a vendor, think about onboarding things that are device specifics. If you are onboarding multiple versions of PCBs, if you are onboarding multiple revisions of chips, of a die, for example, to manage all of your different erratas, all of this you should onboard. Like, if you are a big manufacturer which is in the embedded and electronics game since a long time, you probably have this kind of things already in place. But it's very often that we see in a very fast fashion IoT market that the companies which are like newcomers to this, they don't really onboard this need in their inventories. You should also keep track of your cryptographic components, your toolchain, your versioning, your APIs, all of the things that are supporting your device, whether you're a vendor or a user, you should keep a track of. And now you're going to tell me, but I'm good. If I track all of this, I'm already in a good place. Not so much. You're not in a good place yet. It's just the beginning. Something you really have to think about, sit down, and like give some thinking about is your legal environment. You were not expecting this one, but you really have to sit down and think about it as a device vendor, but also as a device user, both to write down and to think about the constraints it gives you, but also the leverage it gives you. All of the things you can request from your vendors and all of the things you have to prepare question-wise for your clients. You should really sit down and think about it. How can I fit the bill as a vendor, and how can I leverage that as a user? For me, these are like two questions which are like it's completely clear that just the fact that this question exists, you should sit down and think about them. Also, contract matters. Like, who is liable for what? What are your rights? What are the things you can expect and you can ask for from your vendors, and the things you can expect that your clients are going to be asking to you? This is really something you should sit down and think about. Like, what happens if all of a sudden somebody comes knocking saying, okay, this is a tradition, you have 90 days to patch your vulnerabilities, I found something. How do you react? What can you do? And how do you notify your clients? Because it's very often that, especially if you sell a lot of devices, you probably don't track your clients. How do you manage this thing? And also, it's very important. That's why it was the first thing. Like, who's liable for what? Like, I have seen in my career people say it's not my responsibility, it's their responsibility. From a user point of view, I say I've heard people say it's not my responsibility, I just buy a box. The vendor saying, oh, I just sell a box, it's the user responsibility to secure the network around it. And I've seen like OEM, Asian OEM tells like, we are just selling a board and the BSP. Like, that's the vendor's job to secure it in the integration. But when you put that in context and you hear that these words come from like operators of electrical grid at national level, I will not say which country, major vendor like medical device vendors and big Asian OEMs, not small names, like you really realize there's a big problem because nobody wants to take care of that. And like I said, when you see that said by electrical grid operators, by medical device vendors, that really can end up with bodies getting cold on the ground. So now we talked a little bit about like the context of the things that we can find in devices, all the stakeholders, a little bit we talked about the contracts, the legal context. It's also very important that when you start to think about security of the devices, whether it be devices you sell or device you integrate or device you onboard in your environment, it's very important that you think about people that may be interested into you, maybe people that can be interested into attacking you. And it can be also for fun. Like, we've all seen these news of a 14-year-old messing with radio signals that were managing train barriers. It's like, yes, there's the NSA that may, or whatever national level APT threat actor that may be interested into you from like some weird angle. Like, if you stretch of imagination, yes, but are they going to be the most frequent threat to you? Sometimes you should really also think about, sure, and what could the kid with an Arduino and a soldering iron do if they find my thing in a trash can? You should really sit down and think, okay, all of these different type of threat actors, how relevant are they to me? And what could they do? What have I put in place to like actually face these people? It's and you have to also think not to you directly, especially if you're a vendor, not to you directly as your company, but also, are these kind of people going to be interested in your clients? Can they use your thing to attack your clients? So this is also something that you should sit down and think about, and actually write down and formalize. If you have the resources and you have the time, you should really formalize all of this like trajectory. So now what? I have a little bit identified who is after my clients, my devices. What do I need to do? The first thing you need to think about, like, challenge your perception, challenge your assumption. Do not think hardware is irrelevant. Like, I can buy something just to analyze it to attack you or one of your clients. I can jump a fence to connect to your supposedly isolated network. I can make a fake base station. Now it's like 1K and open source software, and you make a fake cell tower. And I can give you a few examples, like where these assumptions, I've met situations where these assumptions were not true and completely ruined a model. For example, I worked quite a bit with electrical grid operators. I've harvested in a trash can, let's say, a VPN access point, which was storing in clear text SNMP.
Hi, JJ.
Yes. Yeah.
We've got a question come through from Julian at Polestar. If the risks are high, is there anything you can actually do?
Yes, of course. You have to, like, from a vendor perspective, you have to design your yes and no. Like, if the risks are high, it's from a vendor perspective. If you are designing for a high risk environment and high risk clients, you can raise the bar in the security of the design. You can onboard TPMs. You can ensure that your bootloaders are correctly signed and everything is done by the book. If you are designing for extremely high risk environment, you can have FIPS certified and glitching certified secure elements and TPMs. There are mitigating measures. But you have to keep in mind that it's a measure, it's in the name, it's a measure which is mitigating a risk. It's not a measure which is negating a risk. And I will come at the very end. My few last slides are about how you can actually mitigate the risks. You can always put mitigating measures in place, but no mitigating measure is absolute. Even an air gap is not an absolute mitigating measure. Like I said before, I can jump a fence, I can break a window, I can. Most of the time, air gaps are not absolute because your devices are not in space. Does that answer a little bit your question? I'm not hearing you, Paul. You're on mute.
Yeah, so my standard. I'm sure Julian will reply. But in the meantime, I think it'd be good for you to just carry on.
Okay, sure. So I was given an example where I actually got the full SNMP v3 passwords to manage an entire OT network of a national grid because it was like stored in clear text. Another example I had, like, and that's kind of also touching a bit on the air gap. That's a little bit touching on the air gap. Then I saw your question, and I'm gonna come back to the user point of view just after this slide. I saw you, man. The air gaps are not absolute. Like I had this example where I was able to spoof a device and access a device isolated network segment. But the isolation was not perfect because there is no absolute network isolation, or else why would you have a network? If a network is completely isolated, then there's no need to communicate. Then there's no need to have a network. I had this stupid example of people that were running BI scripts on a server because that was where devices were dropping their data, and they were wanting to like run their BI script there. And like because the access control was not the best, devices were able to overwrite scripts. In the first example of the VPN access point, this thing was like also hosting a TPM, but the vendor, which was a big name, I will not name because it's all like I'm under NDA sometimes. They decided to load all of the secrets from the MDM into RAM, from the TPM into RAM, and just leave it there. And since the JTAG was not disabled and there was no like flash storage integrity checks, then it became not that hard to get access to the underlying Linux machine, and everything was in a /proc virtual file system. So yeah, you should really challenge this assumption. From a user perspective, if the risks are high, yes, there are some mitigating measures you can put in place. I will not say air gap, but I will say serious network isolation is one thing. Network monitoring is also kind of nifty, but it's not a be-all end-all solution. I think the higher the risks, the more mitigating measures you should put in place to mitigate them. There's no silver bullet. There's no one solution to kill them all. It kind of depends on the situation, on the risk, on the impact. But I'm going to talk about exactly that in a few, because that's the core of the talk, right? So let's talk a little bit how you can actually model these risks, whether be they for your device or for your environment. I hope you've heard about Stride. If you didn't, well, you came to the right place. So like it's a threat modeling methodology. Stride stands for like spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. It's a lot of word, but like it's basically a very nice and support methodology, so you can sit down, look at your system or at your device, and say, now what could go wrong? So I will go through like IoT specific examples for each of these categories. So, but basically how it goes is like you take your device or you take your system and you look at the components. And for each of these components, you ask yourself, what could go wrong? What could go wrong if an attacker poses as something, someone, or a component he or she is not? What could go wrong if an attacker modifies stuff he's not supposed to, whether be it like at rest or in transit? Can I prove that something went wrong, that something did something they were not supposed to? And what could go wrong if I cannot? What could go wrong if an attacker gets data or information in, like, including inferred information that he is not supposed to be getting? What's happening if an attacker can prevent my system from working? And last but not least, what if an attacker can do stuff he's not supposed to? At this point, we are enumerating the threats. Why? Because, I don't remember the guy's name. It was from Polestar. I was asking, what should I do? What thing should I put in place to actually face these risks? The first step is, before asking why should I do, what should I put in place, like, what are the risks we're talking about? In the end, the golden rule of saying, well, am I safe, is kind of simple. Like, it's always the same thing in risk management. Like you have a cost of realization of a risk, you have a probability of occurrence, and if cost times probability is more than what you're paying to cover this risk, then it makes sense. But in the end, that's a business decision, and when you are looking at the security of a system, you are not going to be the one that is taking this decision, but you have to provide your business with the information that they need to take this decision in an informed fashion. Okay, so now that we talked about it, let's talk about spoofing in the context of embedded systems, of IoT. Like, what could be spoofed? can I send you a fake firmware update? Can I fake data that your backend is receiving by posing as a device? Can I send fake DNS answers? Can I pose as the command and control server to the device? Can I pose as a fake DB? All of these things are spoofing. You should look at your design, you should look at your device and say, okay, what would happen if somebody fakes this component, poses as this component? At this point, like I said, we are not looking at the mitigating measures. We are not even looking at, is it possible? We are just asking ourselves the question, what will happen? What will be the impact? And it's very often that you will see that even at this stage, you will start to enumerate relationships in your device, relationships in your system where things are missing. Like, not a lot of people are using the NSSEC. Not a lot of people are actually not really trusting their 4G network, for example. You will see a lot of people, even in production, I will not name names, that are using self-sign certificates. Like SQL injections are in OWASP top 10 since like what now? 10 years? They're still in there, still going strong. Like, most of the time, if data is supposed to be coming from a device, you will not see a lot of people like deploying a lot of precautions with this data. It's okay, it's sent by a device. Why should I care? And like, let's just concatenate things for SQL. Why am I gonna lose time making a prepare statement? Seriously, it's coming from a device. It's trusted. Maybe. So now tampering. Now, what will happen if an attacker changes stuff? What if I change stuff in the configuration of the device? What if I change stuff in the configuration of a server? What if I alter a legitimate firmware update where you are only verifying certain parts of the firmware? I've seen vendors sign archives that were supposed to be containing only user configuration that were able to like point to places they were not supposed to point to, and that was still signed by the vendor. What if your attacker does this kind of things? What if your attacker changes your hash directly in the flash storage? Are you correctly running integrity checks on this one, or now can you log in as root on your device? What if an attacker changes your BI people script in the place where only the devices are supposed to be writing? Again, we have to keep in mind that in this context, we are only thinking about the impacts. What would happen in this case? Because all of this exercise is going to feed into how much mitigation should we put in place. Now, the repudiation, everybody's favorite game. By that I mean the blame game. Who did what? What will happen if like people claim they did nothing. Do you have the means to prove somebody did something or a device did something? Do you leave sufficient traces? It's very often that we see a lot of administrative personnel getting very wide administrative access to infrastructure. And what happens when things go wrong and somebody gets fired for any reason? What will happen? What will happen if an attacker, as a device, emits a lot of events and fields in your log? What will happen? These are questions that are worth asking and that should be asked. Now, information disclosure. It's, can I steal information from you? Can I get crypto material by I don't know, connecting to your JTAG and dumping your RAM? Can I leak some of your crypto keys by fault injection or differential power analysis? Can I stupidly sniff your network? Are you sure you are encrypting everything you should? Can I digest information I should not have? Like I told you, I worked a lot on with electricity operators and smart meters, and that was a very big concern with these guys. Can somebody know if there's nobody home by just listening passively without decrypting anything? This is a major concern, that you will have a lot of privacy questions around here, a lot of question on how safely are you safekeeping your data, the data of your clients, data of your employees. It is a very like important thing to actually manage. Are you protecting your data adequately? It's, you will be surprised by the number of things that are posting things to the wind they shouldn't. I've even seen misconfigured product broadcasts their wireless network encryption key. I will not name the technology in question, but that was a really funny case. You should really like put these the ask yourself the question: what will happen if I don't protect my data adequately? Now, denial of service. This one, everybody have a lot of fun about. Mirai, everybody like that's the favorite. Oh, like monster under the bed of IoT. Like, what if I will become part of a DDoS botnet? But like, before that, what will happen if somebody can remotely brick your device? Are you certain you don't have like fail condition in your update process where somebody could trigger a malicious update that will brick your whole like fleet? Can somebody remotely trigger super high memory consumption? Can somebody trigger a looping reboot condition? Can somebody fill your flash? Can somebody force fill your flash repeatedly until it dies? And this is something I actually found in a product. You could like actually force the product to write so much to flash that it will like burn the flash chip. Can somebody also DDoS you? What will happen if you're getting DDoSed? These are all questions which are very again, I insist, you have to ask yourself, it's kind of a boring process, but it has to be. Now let's talk a little bit about elevation of privilege. What will happen if I can make your device do function calls it's not supposed to? Like good old buffer overflows, especially if you have a lot of people writing a lot of embedded C code, they still happen. What will happen if somebody sends misbehaving traffic on the PCB, like SPI or whatever onboard protocol you have? Like most probably your low-level drivers are not coded defensively. Even like, do you trust your BSP, whatever it may be? Do you trust STM32Cube MX or the whatever? Do you trust them? You have to ask yourself this question. Do you correctly protect your JTAG, your SWD, your whatever debug interface? Can I call commands I'm not supposed to as a consequence of some spoofing? Is your web interface correctly managing the calls to some supposedly admin-only interfaces? These are all questions you should ask yourself. So now you have all of list of things that could go bad. And most probably you have a lot of them. And you have a list of the kind of bad guys that will be looking at you or looking at your clients. And the kind of level of expertise and resources they can put into looking at you. So now you have identified the things that are relevant for you. You have identified things that can go bad, things that are in the realm of possible of the people you actually think can be looking into you. And what should you do? And that's now we are going to talk about mitigating measures. And I will not be able to go through a list of things you could do, because it all depends on your system. It all depends on your architecture. It all depends on the capabilities of your platform, of your CPU, your MCU. Do you have a secure element? What can you do? I don't know. I cannot tell you exactly what to do mitigating measures wise, because this is an engineering decision. Most of the time, you will have to make trade-offs between cost of development, hardware cost, infrastructure costs, firewalls, network probes, what do I know? This is not something where I can give you a list where I can tell you, yes, guys, do this. It will be perfect for everybody. Like I said, there's no silver bullet. What you should do then is sitting down and see what you can put in place in or around your system to address these problematics that you have identified. And the nice side of Stride is that now you have formally identified all of these threats, all of this risk, because of course, when you identify them, you document everything, you write them down, and now you can go through this list and say, okay, this thing it's relevant, it's a big risk to me, and I will put things in place to address it. Or maybe it's gonna be, yeah, this small thing there, if it happens, you know what, who cares? Then you go into this more risk management and informed decision process. You will put in place technical or organizational measure to manage this risk. Sometimes, just like your boss will tell you, it's okay, I can live with that risk because it's small. And sometimes nobody can do anything, and you will just take an external assurance or insurance. I mean, yeah. So what now? Because one of the big risks we discussed in the beginning was the number of things which are not under your control. Like what to do about the third parties. And what actually, I hinted that a little bit when I was talking about it. What should you put in your contracts as rights that you should give to yourself in your contract to control them a little bit, to control a little bit your third parties? Well, you can do or hire a company to do these kind of things, to do like software assessment, hardware assessment, like the oh so sexy general risk and control, and go audit them. It is a very valid way to get in control of risk where you are not the main technical stakeholder. And you know what I said, that's a very boring process. Yes, it's a boring process because the title was not like 10 funny things about hacking IoT. It was like understanding the IoT security. And it's a process that must be repeatable, stable, dependable, boring. That's what it is. If you are to manage IoT security, you have to manage risk. I hope I have not been too boring for you guys, and that it made you think a little bit about how you can approach risk in your devices, whether you sell them or you onboard them. That was a little bit all for me. Oh, I think you were asleep, Paul. That was so bad.
No, don't be silly at all. No, I was just jumping back online there. Hey, thanks very much for that. John, do you have any questions? I know that you brought JG to the fold.
Yeah, typically, when you pen test something, you've got a budget of money. Where do you think people who are doing IoT projects should spend that budget? Should they be looking at hardware, or should they just be looking at the application aspects? So, for instance, like the OWASP, they've got an IoT top 10, and so the brushes on hardware. They're talking about maintaining and updating the operating system, but not talking about, can you hack the radio? Can you hack the Wi-Fi? Can you hack the I2C interface?
I will tell. It really depends. It really depends on the system, and it really depends on how the system is architectured as a whole. Because it's you see, a lot of people are focusing on what is actually, what can they do remotely, right? Because in the end, whenever they think hardware, they think, oh my god, these guys have like magical MacGyver superpowers, and they cracked open my thing. Yes, but like we are not 15 years ago. We live in an age where like you're probably selling your device for like what, 40 euros, 50 euros on Amazon. Your device gets delivered to me in like 24 hours. You have like kids with Arduinos like everywhere. In the UK, you have kids that are learning to program on Microbit or BBC or whatnot. Like, we are not living in the age of the 1.5K dev board anymore. It's if most of the time you have root of trust and trust elements that are lying with the hardware, I would say at least look into the hardware a little bit, especially if you have if you have like trust elements in your hardware. I think it's an underestimated way of attack, and very often I see that people trust blindly the hardware. They should not.
Okay. Julian's just asked another question. I'm wondering how the organization assigns who is the responsible owner of the IoT asset, who can then design the boring contracts. In IT is usually the CISO. In IoT, OT, is it the same?
So it kind of depends on the organization, and it kind of depends on the specific device. I can give you an example. So first thing, I know I'm gonna anger a lot of people of IoTNorth, but for me, IoT doesn't exist. There's no such thing as IoT. It's just basically a communicating embedded system. Prove me wrong. So I'm sorry, guys. It's half a joke, but here when you look at let's say a printer. Like, you have printers with like communicate with their vendors, whatever level of like ink or whatnot. That these kind of use case will fall into more the CISO basket. But now let's look at a cash register. Is that IT or is that business? Should I fall into the basket of the operational risk manager? Like, I don't think there is there's no silver bullet answer to this. It depends on the situation. It's for 90% of the case, unless you're talking about specific stuff like a wireless cash register thingy, a PLC for industrial environments, unless it's like deeply coupled with a business process, then it should fall into this business processes general risk management. But in 95% of the cases, that's going to be the CISO.
Okay, can you stop sharing your screen so you can join us on the screen, as it were? Great. There you are. Fantastic. Stuart asks, what is the current thinking on who cut the internet fibers around France last week and why? I could make my own guesses. Something about a war going on, but you know.
We'll stay away from politics.
I will not confirm nor deny. It's maybe not. It's like, I don't from Why? I don't think it will benefit any one of these like very big players. Somebody was just wanting to prevent somebody else from selling X cryptocurrency. Who knows?
Quite possibly.
Who knows, indeed. Guys, we've hit the top of the hour. I don't see any more questions coming through.
Oh,
So,
I had a few more.
Oh, sorry, did you, John? Please do fire ahead.
I mean, if we're at time, if you've got a few minutes, we'll try and be quick. So do you think there should be an OWASP top 10 for hardware? Is there like vulnerabilities that you see in the field again and again,
Yes.
and that get exploited and have impact?
Yes, like the for me, it's gonna boil down into like lack of ciphering stuff that should be ciphered, lack of integrity control, too much trust in the devices, too much trust in the environment. But is it going to be actually a hardware specific OWASP top 10? I don't know. It's what I see again and again and again is people overtrusting the hardware because it's supposed to be hard. And like I said, we're not 15 years ago. Like anybody can like buy a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino. Well, when it's not super hard to get like right now because of COVID, but it's like the knowledge is there. It's not so hard anymore. So yeah, it's like I like you've seen plenty of memes like people don't correctly set up as SSL stuff. They ignore certificate verification. They don't do integrity verification on their own flash on their own file systems. They use extremely old Linux kernels. They use extremely old hash algorithms. They don't update their user space. That's a little bit the maintenance and the updating is a real problem for from a vendor perspective, both organizational and economical. At some point, where do you balance keeping updating devices that you don't necessarily have a maintenance contract for? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's why I like a device like the Azure Sphere, because then Microsoft just says, well, we're going to guarantee operating system updates for 10 years and you don't have to do anything about it. We'll just do that.
As long as you're connected to Azure,
as long as you're connected and you're air gapped. If you go to these conferences, they talk about zero trust architecture, which basically means air gapping everything.
Not air gapping, like having multiple layers of air gaps and everybody running everything in VMs. Like it's like the principle is very nice, but then you have the reality of teams that have to manage a lot of different environments, a lot of different things, and in the end, when you look at the thing that comes the most from like both the compromissions that happen in the wild and the red team exercises that I help with, this kind of stuff, it's always 90% of the times still things that go wrong are people that ignore the rules, that like put their credentials somewhere in a password.txt file on their desktop, and the more complexity there is for the human, the more space there is for error.
Cool. Stuart Smiles asks, how should root of trust be incorporated into a Raspberry Pi? Is it going to be a TPM in future? So yeah, I mean, trusted platform module depends if it's on Raspberry Pi's roadmap or not, I'd imagine.
I don't know. Do they plan to integrate Raspberry in like at least a chip with a TPM on board? I don't know. I'm not into the Raspberry Pi Foundation little books. Right now, you can have a YubiKey, but you're losing kind of the I need to touch it to ensure that the request is legit. My own take on that is like, don't use Raspberry Pi in production things.
We won't get into that argument here. Me and Paul have had that argument before. Yeah,
I believe
one. Yeah.
How should logging happen in the future? Yeah, maybe it's information disclosure. You can push it up to the cloud. BSI webinar last week, they were saying everything IoT should be online directly all the time, including critical infrastructure.
No. They say that, but they have no argument. Why should I have any?
It depends on your use case and what you consider your attack surface to be.
But especially critical infrastructure, there are things you just cannot play with. You will always have technical vulnerabilities, things you don't know. Then it's a risk management exercise. How far do you accept to live with this kind of risk? That's not for me to decide.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we'll wrap up there. JG, I'm gonna plug your book. In interest of full disclosure, you've not paid me to say this, and I had to buy my own copy. I really like the Furby worked examples. You take apart this toy and you dissect it and see where all the contacts are going and what interfaces you might tap into. And then you take apart how you might intercept I2C and UART and SPI and OneWire, attacking debug interfaces, attacking storage, and then software-defined radio, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, etc. Static and dynamic compilation, and also my favorite chapter is the mitigations at the end. So what you can do about it. So that's the side I come from, is application security and what I can do as a developer to protect myself from some threats. So it's quite an easy read, and I would recommend it. And he's not paid me to say that.
No, I didn't. But now you're gonna have one fresh from the press, because it's, I only know it since 2 weeks. But we're not even 2 weeks, a week. We're gonna have a second edition.
Wow.
Gosh. With even more examples and even more things people can repeat at home. So yeah, I just hope that the current chip Armageddon will not prevent people from actually acquiring the attack platforms.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks very much, Jean. And John, JJ, John, thanks very much. I'm gonna go and get myself some sleep. I've hit the bar now. But hey, John, next month, June, is Steen Graham, isn't it?
Steen, yeah. We will post out the event tomorrow, so you'll be able to RSVP. And also there is an event in July you can go RSVP.
There is indeed. Well. The events are always available on IoTNorth.uk/events. We always list them there just about a week before, due to StreamYard limitations. We can't put them out, the links out before a week prior to the event, but we do put them on the website so you can access them then. It's the YouTube stream. Thanks very much for your time, guys. I'm just having a look. We got a thanks from Stuart. Thanks very much, guys. Very much appreciated, and see you next month.
It was a blast, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, JG. Cheers.